I'm Doug Doyle with the art of the story from the WBGO Archive. This time we go back to October 15th, 2003, when a very special guest joined WBGO's Gary Walker, award-winning author and musician James McBride.
You've just heard one of the tracks of a new recording called The Process. It's wonderful to have you here. I had a number of emails from people saying, I'm going to be at work. Are you going to put that and archive it on the website? And we will do that.
James McBride was the eighth of 12 children. His mother was Jewish. His father was black. In 1995, James wrote the story of his childhood in his book, The Color of Water, a black man's tribute to his white mother. It sold 1.5 million copies and stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 2 years.
I used to, when I was a kid, one time I asked my brother David whether we were black or white. And David said, you want to see something? Come here. And he took me upstairs and he opened the closet door and he said, look in there. And I looked in there and he shoved me inside and closed the door behind me. And I said, let me out. And then someone behind me went, rah! And my other brother was in there hiding, and scaring me to death.
Writing the book, as making the music is for a lot of folks, was a release for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a catharsis in a lot of ways. Partly because when I was 28 years old, I realized I didn't know who I was. And I realized I couldn't figure out who I was until I realized who my mother was. And I didn't know anything about my mother's history. I knew my mother was white, but in my community, we were all pretty much poor or lower middle class, and so it wasn't as much of an issue as people might make it out to be. I mean, it's sort of like right here at WBGO where you're in downtown Newark, but white people walk down the street all the time and nothing happens to them. They just go to work, So although I knew my mother was white, I really had no idea that she was Jewish, and I had no idea the complexity and depth of her history. And so when I investigated, I found out that she had quite a history.
And this book leapfrogs back and forth between your childhood and growing up and your mother's childhood growing up. And she was at first not a ready and willing participant. She said, go away, I'd rather watch Dallas.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, and she meant it. And then she would, if I didn't go away, she'd go away. But what I did was I reported around her. I would go down to Suffolk, Virginia, where she grew up, and interview people who knew. I'd been a reporter for years. I worked at the Washington Post and at the Boston Globe and so forth. And so I knew that, knew what a reporter does. And so I reported around her, and then I would bounce facts off of her. And then it became like a catharsis for her after a while.
James McBride's latest book, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, was named a must-read for the summer by the New York Times and a winner of the National Book Award. That's the art of the story from the WBGO Archive. Thanks to the American Archive of Public Broadcasting and WBGO Archive Director Becca Pulliam. I'm Doug Doyle, WBGO News.